Hey, I'm Chris and welcome to my car channel where I get to discuss my passion for vintage cars and trucks. And that passion runs deep as I got a DeSoto and a Corvair Greenbrier sitting in the garage. And I'm constantly rotating in and out new classics all the time as well. Well, every once in a while I get an opportunity to drive a brand new car. And that opportunity arose when I got to drive this brand new 2017 Audi A4 from Wilmington, Delaware to Beckley, West Virginia to visit the Boy Scout Jamboree. Now, I don't get many opportunities to drive a brand new car. In fact, my current daily driver right now is a 2008 Ford Crown Victoria police car. But even though it's a 2008, the design and the style dates back to 1998. My other new car is a 14-year-old Toyota 4Runner. So having the opportunity to drive this car at 845 miles round trip was both exciting and fun. And during that 845-mile drive, I discovered quite a few things that make this car so cool. But I've also discovered quite a few things that aren't so cool as well. Let's start with the cruise control. On every car there's a stalk on the steering wheel and you press it up or down for a 1 mile per hour change in your cruise speed. On this car there's a second detent that changes that cruise speed both up and down in 5 mile per hour increments. Cool, right? Another feature of the cruise control is when you decrease your cruise speed, the car applies the brakes and lights up the brake lights to alert drivers behind you that you've slowed down. While we're talking about the brakes on this car, they're amazing. They're strong and inspire confidence and they're reassuring. But I don't know if it's the size of the large front rotors at 13 1/3 inches, maybe it's the size of the piston in the master cylinder, or possibly the electronic mapping. But anything but the slightest touch of the brake pedal causes the brakes to grab so aggressively and fast and hard that any passengers in the car, they're lunged forward against their seatbelt. Now it takes some practice and some time behind the wheel to be able to modulate the brakes in a way that makes your passengers not want to whack you in the head whenever you stop the car. Not too luxurious, Audi. Audi for a very long time has been known to make cars with a bank vault-like feel inside, and part of that feel comes from heavy doors. Now, Audi does a very good job on making these heavy doors feel much lighter than they are until you actually try to close them. You see, closing them normally causes them to slam so hard that sometimes the exterior door skin rattles. Closing them any lighter isn't hard enough for the second latch to catch. So every time I close these doors on this car, I feel like I'm left with this heavy guilt feeling for slamming them. While we're outside, I love how the hood rolls around into the fender and that gap blends into the body accent line. It's somewhat reminiscent of the early Saab 900s. Also, I love the sequential rear taillights and the LED lighting too. Speaking of lighting, there are lots of lights on this car. You have a whole lot of light over the license plate, a whole lot of taillights and brake lights. You have lights here on the door handles, inside the door panels, and a striking nighttime interior light display with every switch, dial, and knob lit up with the same color and intensity throughout the cabin. It's an outstanding job in design and execution. Also, the interior of this A4 is ultra sleek and tidy, clean, organized, and almost antiseptic. It's amazing how simple the interior controls are considering how many functions can be controlled with them. That is, until you attempt to use the multimedia interface, which Audi calls the MMI. It's confusing and difficult to use, takes too much time to figure out, and creates a big distraction while you're driving. I remember when BMW first came out with their iDrive, and there were so many complaints about its complexity and how overwhelming it was. Well, when I read that, I just chalked it up to a bunch of old farts who couldn't figure out technology. Audi's MMI is supposed to be the easiest to use in the industry, and now I'm starting to think that maybe I'm one of those old farts. Also, when going through the owner's manual about the MMI, sometimes the manual calls it the multimedia interface, sometimes it calls it the infotainment display. Well, which is it? Because the table of contents doesn't list anything about infotainment. Then it's the screen. It's just plopped here on the dash. It's like it's an afterthought. It doesn't retract or hide away. It's just always there. But one thing I do love about Audi's MMI is the media hard drive space. There's 10 gigs of storage for all kinds of things like photos, music, and even videos. In fact, you can load your own CDs and DVDs and even SD cards through the port that's in the glove box, and then you can watch your videos on the screen. While in the glove box, you'll also notice a dial. This dial channels heated or cooled air from the air vents into the glove box, and it's enough to keep sandwiches and snacks warm or cold while driving. Smart, right? While we're talking about heat and air, you have the typical front passenger air vents that you find on any car, but then there's this center air vent in front of the passenger. It's a dummy vent, and it isn't connected to anything. So I'm not quite sure why Audi would want to put a fake vent there. And how about these seats? Yes, they're bolstered and supportive and wrapped in leather, just as you would expect. But just as important as that are these headrests. You see, they're in the exact perfect position to be comfortable. They don't push your head too forward, and they're not too far back in the event of a rear-end collision. Back to the interior. This car has the hands-free trunk release where you kick your foot along the sensor and the trunk opens itself. The problem is opening the trunk isn't that easy. You see, when you have your hands full, you're holding a lot of weight, and now you have to stand on one foot while you kick the other out in the air. So when I was leaving the hotel in Beckley, I tried the hands-free release and got so frustrated, so aggravated with it, I ended up dropping my bags and opening the trunk the usual way. Back to the interior, I found the shifter to be confusing and unnatural, unintuitive and clumsy. Same with the parking brake button. However, after some time with the car, I started to appreciate the simplicity and ease of how it works. Also, one thing I do love about the shifter is how the flat top acts as a pedestal when working the MMI infotainment system. And lastly, I'm overwhelmed by the amount of performance and economy Audi has gotten out of this 2-liter turbo engine. It wasn't that long ago that this 2-liter was pumping out a maximum of 150 horsepower. Today, it's 252 horsepower. It gives me a 0 to 60 time of 5.3 seconds, all along with Quattro all-wheel drive, and I got 35 miles per gallon round trip and a 450 mile range per tank of gas. It's truly outstanding. So there you go. That's my review of this 2017 Audi A4. I hope you liked it. Let me know what you thought about my impressions and if I missed anything, so leave me a comment down below. Also, if you're new to my channel, be sure to subscribe, click the bell icon, that way you get notified whenever a new video gets uploaded. And as always, thanks so much for watching.